آزادی به نام خلق ایران شاهرخ دانشور هستم. زاده 13 شهریور 45 تهران تو رشته عمران دانشگاه.
In the name of freedom and in the name of the people of Iran, my name is Shahrokh Daneshvarkar. I was born on September 4th, 1966 in Tehran. I studied civil engineering at KN Tausi University of Technology, and I am now on death row. I have lived a strange life, full of ups and downs, and recounting it may perhaps serve as a light for anyone seeking truth and justice, for those who do not view the world through the lens of prejudice. First, I wish to express my gratitude to my late father. At the time of his passing, I was in prison, and to my dear mother, who raised me on lawful sustenance and with integrity, teaching me not to remain indifferent to what happens around me, to stand by others, and to seek the truth. They taught me to be vigilant and responsive in the face of injustice.
از کودکی ما از زندگی کردن توی روستای ری توی بشاگرد، از روستای سرگان، از توابع کنارک تو سیستان و بلوچستان دیگران باید بگن، اما در مقابل اختلاس و حسابسازی توی نیروگاه.
Others may be better suited to speak of my childhood and my time among the people in the village of Jui in Bashagard and the village of Sharhan near Konarak in Baluchistan. But I must mention that later, I stood against falsified accounting and embezzlement at a power plant, prevented an unqualified, nepotism-appointed engineer from acting improperly, and sought to secure the rights of personnel at another facility. Although I was a supervising construction engineer, and the work, livelihood, and salaries of dozens depended on my signature, I upheld conscience and fairness. Of course, I owe these qualities to all my mentors.
انقلاب ضد سلطنتی شد، من 12 سالم بود. درک زیادی هم نداشتم از شرایط. شاید براتون عجیب باشه که یه مسجد روی قهار بودم، یه بسیجی فعال. با اینکه دانش آموز بودم، حوزه علمی میرفتم. توی کارهای
When the anti-monarchy revolution took place, I was 12 years old. It may sound surprising that I was an ardent mosque goer and an active member of the Basij. At the same time, while I was a student, I attended a seminary, participated in community work through Jihad-e Sazindagi, served as an instructor in the literacy movement, and went multiple times to the war front against Iraq, taking part in several operations. That spirit of truth-seeking and opposition to injustice led me, even on the battlefield, not to remain indifferent to the killing of prisoners of war. It became a turning point for me. Yes, I did not allow prejudice to dominate my thinking, and I questioned everything. I asked myself, where does Ruhollah Khomeini's path lead? The answer, Velayat-e Faqih, the rule of the supreme jurist. That would mean I am a sheep, and the supreme leader must be my shepherd. I rejected Khomeini and his doctrine.
این سردرگمی‌ها بودن که چه باید کرد. دوم خرداد شروع شدش و خاتمی داستانش آغاز شدش. به نظر میده قشنگی بود. با اصلاحات گام به گام میشه رژیم رو اصلاحش کرد. شدم یه اصلاح طلب. 4 سال عمرم تباه شد.
In a state of confusion about what to do, the wave of May 22nd, 1997, and Mohammad Khatami emerged. It seemed appealing. Perhaps gradual reform could lead us beyond the rule of the supreme leader. 4 years of my life were wasted before it became clear that the smiling cleric, by his own admission, was merely a figurehead, and that reform within the framework of the constitution of Velayat-e Faqih is a dead end. I do not recall whether it was Mehdi Karoubi or Mir Hossein Mousavi who said the goal was a return to Khomeini's golden era. Alas, what was I to do now? The only path was the overthrow of the system. This became my goal in 2001. It was extremely difficult. Regime change-oriented opposition groups were few. I found myself at a crossroads. Monarchism, or the MEK, On one side were the MEK, about whom I had heard so many negative things that I was afraid to approach them. On the other side, I saw individual rule as the very product of the Shah, Khomeini, and Ali Khamenei. What was to be done?
رسانه‌های خیلی زیادی هستن که هم خود رضا پهلوی رو پوشش میدن، هم حرفاشو. میشنیدم حرفاشو که چی داره میگه. میگفت اگر به انتخاب من باشه من از هر کسی جمهوری خواهترم.
Many media outlets were covering Reza Pahlavi. What was he saying? He said, "If it were up to me, I am more Republican than anyone else." He said he envisioned no role for himself after the overthrow and wanted to remain above factions and safeguard national unity. He argued that monarchy had been effective in some countries, therefore it is a good system, and so on. My goal was the overthrow of Khamenei's reactionary regime. If this was its alternative and if it could lead us to regime change while leaving the choice of governance to the people, what was wrong with joining him? So I did. Despite inner struggles, I followed his prescription, turned towards civil resistance, and became a supporter of nonviolent struggle.
زمان گذشت و رسیدیم به دی 96 و آبان 98 آبان خونین 98 همه میدونن چه خونهایی ریخته شد.
Then came January 2018, and then November 2019, the bloody November 2019. Khamenei's ruthless regime massacred the people with shocking brutality, killing at least 1,500. It displayed unrestrained, naked violence. The dictator lined up all his military, law enforcement, and security apparatus and issued his orders. What was our response? The Shah's son kept insistently talking about nonviolent, peaceful struggle. I rejected him outright. It was nauseating. Later, when he spoke of preserving and reforming the repressive institutions and maintaining constant ties with Basij and Revolutionary Guard forces, and when I read his so-called emergency plan and saw that appointments and dismissals and power overall would remain in the same hands and ultimately rest on his own authority, I felt vindicated in casting him aside. I even congratulated myself. But once again, I found myself facing another dead end. Up to this point, it is clear that I was never dogmatic in my choices and that truth-seeking has always guided me.
دیگه رسیدم به اون انتخاب سخت. دیگه چیزی دیگه نبود.
The time had come to make the hardest choice, the very choice many fear. I did too, but I gave myself the chance to at least take a step toward understanding it. That difficult choice was the People's Mojahedin organization of Iran. There I was, facing one organization and many questions and doubts. Why did they go to Iraq? Why attacking Iran? Why the hijab? Why Islam at all? Were the disputes between Ruhollah Khomeini and Masoud Rajavi all about power? Why were there photos of Mr. Rajavi and Musa Kiabani alongside Khomeini? And so on.
اما مهمترین چیزی که بهم کمک میکردش که یه خورده تو انتخابم
The most influential factor was that every current I had passed through spoke negatively about the MEK, yet even then, the decision was difficult. A full and committed choice. Let me see what the MEK actually say and what they truly want. The starting point of new paths is total commitment, and the beginning of great leaps is dedication, especially in an age where the world is trapped in a lack of commitment. Yet the glowing ember of resistance and freedom is kept alive in the fiercest confrontation between reaction and revolution. Remarkable. Mrs. Maryam Rajavi says her greatest commitment is the struggle for the freedom of the Iranian people.
نقطه آغاز مسیرهای نو انتخاب تمام عیار است و نقطه آغاز جهش‌های عظیم تعهد است. در زمانی که جهان اسیر بی‌تعهدی است، در زمانی که کرامت انسان را به مسلخ میبرند، در دوران تلاشی اخلاقی و اجتماعی کشورمان ایران، در دوران فروپاشی ارزش‌ها، تعهد ما به آزادی، به انسانیت و به مجاهدت سرمایه ماست. تعهدات ما رمز استحکام، پویایی و رویان بودن این جنبش و همچنین حافظ ارزش‌هایی است که برای آن جنگیده‌ایم. بله، تعهدات ما مسیر وصل ما به اهداف بزرگی است که برای آن برخاسته‌ایم. و من می‌خواهم امروز تعهداتم را یک بار دیگر یادآور شوم. اولین و بزرگترین تعهد نبرد برای آزادی مردم ایران و سرنگونی رژیم ولایت فقیه و برچیدن بساط بنیادگرایی و جنگ افروزی این رژیم در کل منطقه است. تعهد من دادخواهی شهیدان است. دادخواهی 30,000 زندانی قتل عام شده و دادخواهی خون کهکشانی پرتلالو از بهترین، آگاهترین، زیباترین و دلیرترین فرزندان ایران زمین. و تعهد مبارزاتی من اثبات و تحقق هدف بالا بلند مسعود است که در تاریکترین روزها، در پرکینه ترین زمانها به پا خواست و اخگر فروزان مقاومت و آزادی را در مهیبترین رویارویی بین ارتجاع و انقلاب شعله‌ور نگه داشته است.
بذار ببینیم آقای مسعود رجوی چی میگه. ایشون میگه
Let us see what Mr. Masood Rajavi says. Yes, yes, my dear, they strike us and take from us. Let it even be Reza Shah the Great who prevails. Let the great king rise from the grave.
آره آقا جون، میزنن از ما میبرن. اصلا اعلیحضرت رضا شاه کبیر میبره. اصلا آریامر از قبر زنده میشه. اصلا امام ملعون راحل برمیگرده. ما عقب میمونیم. به ما هیچ چی نمیرسه. ما مطرح نیستیم. مطرح هم نخواهیم شد. چند سال باز باید اپوزیسیون باشیم. آره تا آخر عمر. ما مجاهدیم. ما که از قبل گفتیم کسی بیشتر مقاومت کنه از ما جلو این رژیم زانو هم میزنیم، هژمونیش هم میپذیریم، با افتخار همین کارو میکنیم.
عجب. بذار یه بار مرور بکنیم چه خبر بوده. خاتمی با گفتگوی ملیش هنوز دنبال مشارکت تو قدرت هستن.
Striking, let me review once more. What did Mohammad Khatami say? National dialogue. Are they still seeking participation and a share of power? And Reza Pahlavi, what about him? His questionable Delegate Me project, his emergency plan, the idea of concentrating power in his own hands. And as for Ali Khamenei, his position on absolute velayat-e faqih is entirely clear.
نمیخوام مسیری که و راهی که اومدم رو طولانی بکنم. مجاهدین در یک کلام دنبال آزادی هستند. آزادی مردم.
I do not want to prolong the story of my path. In one word, the MEK seek the freedom of the people because they are fighters for the people. Let me, for the 100th time, revisit Mrs. Miriam Rajavi's 10-point plan. Let me once again examine the MEK's clear lines of demarcation.
ایدئولوژی و پیام مجاهدین بر ضد ارتجاع و بنیادگرایی، مخصوصاً برای 2 میلیارد نفر مسلمانان جهان این است که مرزبندی اصلی اجتماعی و اقتصادی و سیاسی همین است. بین اسلام و غیر اسلام نیست. بله، در فرهنگ و ایدئولوژی مجاهدین مرزبندی اصلی که مرتجعین و بهره‌کشان و غارتگران از نفی اون حد اکثر استفاده رو به عمل می آورند، مرز بین استثمار کننده و استثمار شونده است، بین ستمگر و ستم زده است. می خواهد شاه باشد یا ولی فقیه یا هر چیز دیگر با هر اسم و عنوان دیگر.
این شد که شدم یه کانون شورشی. هر روز که داره میگذره بیشتر و بیشتر در مسیری که قرار گرفتم بهش افتخار میکنم، استوارترم.
And so, I became a resistance unit. With each passing day, I grow more convinced, more steadfast, and more resolute in the path I have chosen. The road I have taken has been difficult, and that is precisely the path of evolution. One of the principles of evolution is that it is irreversible and moves forward with acceleration.
من بارها از خدا سپاسگزار بودم به خاطر عنایتی که به من داشته. هر جا
I have often thanked God for guiding me away from the wrong path, and if I ever strayed, for giving me a jolt and rescuing me from dead ends. I am forever grateful to my brothers and sisters who did not cast me aside and who saved me from the whirlpool of confusion. I warmly clasp their hands and hold them in the highest respect. Now that I am under a death sentence and the gallows are near, I declare that I take pride in having leaders such as Masoud and Maryam Rajavi. If I am given another chance, I will return to the struggle against the oppressors with 100-fold intensity. This time with the slogan, "Death to the oppressor," whether the Shah or supreme leader. With a red line, a clear and unmistakable line, I distance myself from both Shah and the mullahs, and once again, for the freedom of my people, I will give my life and pay the price. My head shall never bow. I swear by the blood of my brothers in arms, we will stand until the end.
شاهرخ دانشور، زندان قزل حصار، واحد 4، 22 آذر ماه 1404.